A couple of thoughts here on the weekend about the investment opportunity in AI in China, and this comes at the context where everybody is heading into the Nvidia long trade at the all-time highs of the S&P 500 and so on day after day, while the opposite is the case in China. Weakness across the board, not only in small caps or speculative names or startups like NIO, but also the big names like Alibaba and Baidu, about which I'm going to talk about now for a couple of minutes. So first of all, I want to show this chart, which shows a benchmark of LLMs across the globe, and interesting to see the Chinese ones doing really well here, actually being number one, the ones from Alibaba. And that is quite remarkable. I would say scientists or people who are, really into the depth of all of these benchmarks and the efficiencies and the technicalities of that will possibly not be surprised by that. But if you look into the investment world, I would say there is an ongoing narrative out there that China will not play a role in AI because of the US sanctions on, for example, Nvidia chips, right? So I think this is a false and misleading claim, and we see it day after day with benchmarks like this. By the way, we had another case in which Stanford researchers were actually copying, I should say, plagiarizing an LLM by Tsinghua University, so one of the most famous universities in China. And they've done it so because this LLM was actually easier and more low cost to train. So this brings kind of together this whole narrative and discussion around that China doesn't have access to the most potent chips, the H100 and so on, however you call them by Nvidia, and therefore should be lacking. And I said a while ago already, when the chip bans came out, not only will China go and develop their own chips, which by the way they have done, and now we see price cuts in China by Nvidia because they are not as compelling as the Huawei chips, the Ascend. Interesting development there. Obviously for Nvidia it's not the most high-end chip, it's the best chip which they can sell in China currently. But anyways, yeah, that was just one way how they possibly would work with those sanctions and what could be the unintended outcomes. But the other one might be that China will go and develop algorithms that are more low cost to train and that are running on less potent hardware. And it's interesting to see that now US researchers are actually using those Chinese coded LLMs because they are cheaper to train, because China possibly is putting more effort into that because they don't have the same compute power, right? And so I wouldn't write off China at the AI front at all, even when it comes to chatbots, ChatGPT-like solutions. There are many different applications from AI-generated videos, text, and so on. Also in China, most people don't know about it. I have used it myself with, for example, having access to the Ernie bot from Baidu. So all of that is existing, but let's say it's better in the US. Still, I think there will be lots of applications coming out in China that will be, because of the uniqueness of that market, at larger scale and sometimes more innovative, and sometimes, like I said, benefiting from some of these unintended outcomes of the sanctions, like using less compute power and therefore easier and low cost to train. So all of that shouldn't be in the intended outcome of what the United States were thinking about when they put on the measures. And ultimately this shows that China will possibly just develop their own ecosystem again. We had the chance to lure them into our ecosystem. There is also some news now that ChatGPT will disable access to APIs for Chinese companies. By the way, actually ChatGPT was blocked in China anyways, but some companies were still using it and so on. But you'll see that China will develop its own ecosystem that will run on this China-made hardware, China-made algorithms and compute and so on. And there is an investment opportunity for that, right? You can't tell me that this excitement is currently priced into a stock like Baidu and Alibaba, which are currently making lows day after day, right? And so one way to think about, and this is not investment advice, I'm not invested in the company myself, but Alibaba has this very intelligent model, in my opinion, that they're giving out cloud credits, Alibaba cloud credits, to AI startups who are not able to pay for such resources, for example, the compute power that is being hoarded by these big companies like Alibaba, but also Baidu, Tencent, and so on. And they're using this in order to gain equity, so meaning having a stake in those companies that are developing services. So these might be the small startups that you won't be able to invest in publicly yet. And also in a couple of years down the line, maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, might be big companies, might be unicorns. China has so many unicorns, and those might be just the emerging ones currently. And Alibaba, due to the fact that they give the cloud services out, and in exchange they're getting equity in these companies, is actually securing a stake in all of these different companies in that way. And such Alibaba stock turns into an ETF for AI in China in the end. Think about that. So this is just an unpriced opportunity in Alibaba stock, in my opinion. It's a long-dated call option that is priced at 0 currently, and something to think about. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily going to invest into Alibaba because of that, but it's something that international investors certainly should think about, in my opinion, because it's not like you can write as many headlines as you want in Bloomberg or wherever, but this is going to happen. They're going to monetize those services, they're going to create those solutions, and it will be as, if not more, innovative than what we have in the West. So there will be financial future cash flows and so on that needs to be discounted at some point into the valuation models of companies like Alibaba. So that's one thing to think about from an investment perspective. Another one might be Baidu, which is also at the forefront. It's maybe a little bit more nerdy and more technical, and I'm not aware that they're doing a similar model like Baidu, that they're securing equity stakes, but might be. I have to look deeper. And yeah, so for Alibaba, this might be good news. By the way, they are now attacking Pinduoduo, which has been a loved stock by Wall Street because of their growth numbers and because of their Western exposure as well. I'm currently seeing here lots of advertisement by Alibaba Group, so PayPal and, for example, or AliExpress now with David Beckham on the streets here in Europe. So it seems they are finally catching up on the game. I'm personally not as interested in going long Alibaba yet, but I have to say all of that sounds pretty interesting, and I thought it's not something where magazines, newspapers and so on are currently talking about. So I'll put it out there, and then I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next videos.